Good evening. I will call to order the Finance Committee meeting on April 14th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. We have three items this evening on the agenda. We have a statement of interest from the Marlborough Public School Department. We have the MEDC FY 2023 operating budget, as well as a transfer request for capital improvement plans and bonds. And I will begin with order number 22-100-8551, Statement of Interest for Marlborough Public Schools to the Massachusetts Schools Building Authority relative to the Richest School. I will begin by reading the letter submitted by the Mayor. Honorable President Ossing and Councilors, on February 8th, 2022, the School Committee voted to submit a Statement of Interest to the Massachusetts School Building Authority. That is the first critical step in applying for funding through the MSBA's Program for School Building Construction, Addition, Renovation, and Repair Grants. The SOI allows districts to inform the MSBA about deficiencies that may exist in local school facilities and how these deficiencies inhibit the delivery of the district's educational program. The Marlborough Public School Administration and the School Committee have briefly discussed the future needs of Richer Elementary School. Since October 2021, we have had 290 new students, bringing in just over 5,000 in the district. While I believe that we will need to address the immediate space constraints and the renovation, I'm concerned that the Richer School will not provide the adequate space needed and more in-depth analysis needed to be conducted before addressing capital needs. Enclosed is a letter from Superintendent Bergeron and Finance Operations Director Doug Diaz, as well as drafted language for the order for submission. The deadline for submission is April 29, 2022, and the filing of the SOI is a formal procedure enabling a district to communicate in its interest in a potential school building construction or renovation project. It does not obligate the city to commit to any project or funding of any kind. Sincerely, Arthur G. Vigent, Mayor, and I will bring up Superintendent Bergeron, please. Anyone else? Doug? Thank you. Good evening.
Mr. Diaz is going to hand out a slide to everybody, a slide deck.
Thank you, Doug. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us up to speak. Let me just start by obviously first saying thank you. Due to the efforts of the school committee, mayor, and the council, we successfully opened the Goodnow School, and if we had not done that on time and under budget, that would have put serious wrinkles into our plans during the pandemic. We were able to serve all kindergarten, first, and second grade students in person for as many parents who wish that during that period of time. So having the Goodnow School open was incredibly successful for us, being able to offer a program that we wanted at the elementary level. So first, thank you. And second, I'd like to have my team introduce themselves to the council, if that is okay.
Thank you.
Council,
Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mary Murphy, Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning.
R.J. Scaza, Principal of Richer School.
Doug Diaz, Director of Finance and Operations.
So Mr. Diaz has put together a short slide deck for the council, and really we just wanted to highlight a couple things for the statement of interest that we're going through right now, and just really to highlight the fact that the statement of interest really is just that. It is, we don't have a building project to put in front of you, we don't have a feasibility study, none of us are engineers or architects, but we would like to get in line. And really, I'm gonna kind of keep on saying that, but this is our process to let the state know that we would like to get in line to be considered for a future project. And I think that some of the data that we can share with you will support that effort. So I'm gonna ask Doug if he can walk through some of the slides, and then we'll all provide comments as needed.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. So and excuse my voice today, I apologize. On the first slide here, I just wanted to show a timeline for the original Richer SOI that resulted in the Goodnow Brothers Elementary project. That SOI was submitted in March of 2015. The feasibility study happened in June 2017. Just a couple of years between the SOI submission and the feasibility being done. We explored multiple different options, ended up choosing to build a new school and a model school through the MSBA, which at the time was considered to be the best option for the district, and also resulted in a large reimbursement from the MSBA to build the new school. Appropriation for the construction happened in April 2018, and we finished the major part of the construction project in May 2020, just in time, obviously, as the superintendent mentioned, to help us tremendously during the pandemic. The building was formally opened for students September 2020. On the next page, we just highlight that during the Goodnow project, back in 2016, there was an MSBA enrollment projection in which it was estimated that we would have 2,260 kindergarten through fifth grade students in 2026. The reality is today, on the right side of the page, we have far exceeded that projection a few years ahead of time. So today, we have over 2,500 K through 5 elementary students in the district, which is pushing up against our capacities within the school.
And we see that enrollment growth not just at the elementary level. We've also had significant enrollment growth at Wickham and the high school. And specifically, I would point to the Goodnow Brothers School, which is our newest and recently constructed school. When we were approved for construction, that school was approved for 610 students. That was what the MSBA predicted for its enrollment. I believe on this sheet it's at 775 as of yesterday. So we are significantly above what our predicted enrollment would be for that school, and that's leading us to certain pressures that we experienced before building construction, which, I'm going to ask Dr. Skaza to kind of talk a little bit about what does it look like in his school on a daily basis, and what are some of the non-traditional classrooms and spaces we're using for education. So I'll ask Dr. Skaza to speak to that.
Sure. I guess the general message to communicate is that space causes stress for all, space constraints, for students, for staff, for families. So I guess some of the space constraints to highlight are that we had to deconstruct our library to make the library space into 2 classroom spaces. We have library books and stacks in the hallways and in the cafeteria, which is obviously not ideal. Fortunately, we have students who are all appropriately placed in classroom spaces and instructional spaces throughout the school. However, many of them are not ideal. So we make do. We try to arrange things to the best of our abilities. However, spaces that were originally intended for a specific logical use are no longer used for specific logical use. So you have, the most egregious example could be a custodian's closet that was labeled custodian's closet is now being used as a testing room or some auxiliary space in the building. So again, the general message is that space constraints in an elementary school cause stress for the entire community.
And further, I would ask Assistant Superintendent Murphy to talk about part of the history in which we originally went forward in the statement of interest back in 2015 was our response to serving students in a positive way in all demographics of students, all separate groups of students. And the state had specifically given us feedback that the way that we were serving students back then, especially EL students and some of our separate special education programs, that were lacking in terms of what the state wanted to see from the Marlborough Public Schools. So I'm going to ask Mary if she can talk a little bit about where these pressures are coming and what it's going to lead us to in the very near future.
I'm going to start by saying that every student in the Marlborough Public School is getting a high-quality education, and every educator in the Marlborough Public School is doing an amazing job. And unfortunately, at times, we have to team up in classrooms. So instead of having a dedicated classrooms for special ed students or for ELD services, so for our EL students, which usually would take place in a smaller classroom where students can comfortably learn how to speak English, listen to English being spoken, and develop those skills that way. Those groups are happening in a pull-aside inside a regular classroom because we don't have separate spaces. We will not have spaces for those services for the next couple of years. On top of that, when we went forward with the Good Now School, we wrote an educational plan. That was the blueprint of our educational system in the elementary schools, and it was based on project-based learning. Students being able to flexibly group, move out, work in groups all over the buildings, and create projects. We really cannot do that when we are really enclosed in small classrooms. So the vision of instruction, of high quality of instruction, where we want to go in the future, especially with all the tools and the technology we have in the Marlborough Public Schools, is not where we want it to be based on facilities.
So we're certainly not presenting to the council any type of doom and gloom. We're just giving you a realistic understanding of where we are right now. Thankfully, we have a brand new building, 110,000 square feet, that was, I'm gonna push that away, I'm getting a little feedback. 110,000 square feet that was built in the elementary level. So we have been able to still keep our elementary class sizes at what I would refer to as a competitive and positive place. We're still around 19.8 to 20.9, I believe, in terms of our elementary class sizes. And that's good. That's actually better than we were before we had the building project. So that's a positive thing. But what it's going to do is we're going to start to feel pressure. And when we have that type of classroom pressure, we're going to have to make decisions. And some of those decisions, while might not be unpopular, we have to serve all the students in an equitable manner. So right before the construction, I know you heard from me and you heard from Mary and other folks that we didn't have rooms for art. We didn't have rooms for music. We didn't have the spaces that we wanted. There is going to be a point, if enrollment continues to grow, we're going to have to make some of those decisions. So realistically, what we're trying to do is get to the MSBA to get in line, to tell them we're going to need a project at some point. It probably is not next year, but as we submit this statement of interest, that now puts us on their screen, if you will, of a community that is looking to potentially solve a problem. I don't know if you want to go to the next slide, Doug.
On the next page in front of you, we just talked a little bit about the capital needs of Richer, and just to echo the rest of the team here, the Richer School is a very functional school. It's clean, it's safe, thanks in large part to the work of the facilities department. It is a good school, and that was one of the reasons why back in 2015, it was decided to add another building instead of tackle that building at that time. Reality is, the building does need some capital improvements. The building envelope, roof, windows need to be replaced. HVAC needs to be upgraded, as well as electric, plumbing systems, some accessibility concerns, and the modulars that were built in the mid-90s would need to be replaced. So we might as well take advantage of that and build a permanent addition and get us some additional space at the site as well. And Dr. Scaza mentioned a little bit already about the space constraints. As you mentioned earlier, there's a few classroom spaces for specials and specialized learning environments. The media center has been changed into 2 classrooms right now without a permanent walls, not a super ideal space. Gymnasium is not at the size that we would expect for a modern elementary school. Same thing for the cafeteria. And because we've taken a lot of the storage spaces for breakout rooms, we're very low in storage space. We have some paper in the hallways, a couple of copiers in the hallways, which is just not ideal.
So our request tonight for the school committee, So of course, tonight, the school committee has already passed the statement of interest. They have voted it. We bring it in front for the council to consider this. We also look at this as simply a first step, just to let the state know that we are interested in a future project. However, none of us can tell you what that project is going to look like, what that project is going to be. Similar to where we were in 2015 when we came in front of the council, we were talking about renovating the Richer School. Certainly there is a need for renovation, but as that project, as we went through that process with the architects and the engineers, we found very quickly that having a fourth elementary school would be the most advantageous thing. Thank goodness we did that. It has helped us tremendously. And we are taking in our 6% enrollment growth in 1 year. We've been able to take all those students into our school buildings because of the decisions that have been made without having to come back to council and ask for modulars outside the building or any other type of construction or facilities that would be very expensive at that time. So we look at this as a first step. And we're asking, obviously, for support from the city council to support us in the first step, but with no guarantee that the MSBA is going to take this up this year.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. I will, is that, okay, thank you.
I feel like if I put this mic on, it's going to...
Understand. I will open up to the council if they had any questions. Council Orr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the panel. Great team that we have running our schools. I appreciate it. The first question I have is related to the Goodnow Brothers School. Was there any opportunity when we looked at that design to add up any more floors from what we have presently?
So one of the things that is sometimes not as popular is three-story elementary schools. While most of the elementary schools we see in the state are at 2 stories at most, and they don't generally push elementary schools to 3 levels. It does happen occasionally, but they don't push it. If we're looking to go up, that would be a question that I would refer in the feasibility study to the architects and engineers to talk about what that would look like. But I will say that one of the options that was presented to the city the last time we were in feasibility with the MSBA was to build a richer school that would house 1,040 students. And we had rejected that, saying we didn't think it was going to be a good thing. That most likely would have been a 3-level school, with 4th and 5th grade being on the 3rd level.
Thank you for that answer. The other point I just wanted to make is we see that same pressure that you see. We have seen developers come in just recently, as of this past Monday. Someone would like to present a building on Lincoln and Mechanic with over 200 units. And again, I'm sure there will be some school children that come along with these new constructed places to live. And Marlborough's a great community to live in. It's very attractive. We have low taxes. We have a lot going on. We have a great school system, as you noted. But it's a magnet, and we have to be aware of that. When you presented your statement of interest to us, I pointed out that 10% is what it is right now that we're over from the projection that was made for Goodnow. We're over 250 when we looked at 2,500, so we're 10% over already. And we're seeing on this council floor other developers interested in coming into the city, presently being built, the Green Project, and others being proposed. So I just think this is smart planning, and I'm in support of the statement of interest. I'll be one of the councilors that will support this to be approved, and I will ask for a suspension so that they can get this in by April 29th.
Good.
So,
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you,
Council
Mr. Chair.
Orr. Thank you. Council Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to state that I am a parent here in the city of Marlborough. My child does attend Richer School with Dr. Skaza, and my husband actually also attended Richer School back in the 1980s. Councilor Doucette, no? I didn't know if you also attended Richer School. So I just wanted to share that I've been in the building a number of times over the last several years, and it certainly is, it's dated. It's a nice school, and, the teachers and the administration do a wonderful job at the school, but I can definitely see firsthand some of the room for improvement on top of just the need for space. So one thing that stood out to me in the mayor's letter is one of the last lines, that this does not obligate the city to commit to any project or funding of any kind. So for me, I'm definitely in support of taking this next step because it makes sense to me, and it also doesn't specifically obligate us to anything at the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Brown. Councilor Pullman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the panel as well. I appreciate all of the overview, and I know this is a big decision, but something that's really important for the quality of our students' education. And sorry, Councilor Brown, I went to Kane School, so sorry to not. Oh, there you go. So we've all had different experiences. I had a couple of questions. I'm definitely in support of it overall, because I know taking the first step is really important, and as was mentioned, this waiting in line. So I'm curious, one, how long the potential of wait might be, and would there be any barriers, since we just did the process with Good Now, where we wouldn't be moving forward as quickly because we had just done something with the group as a whole?
It's a great question. I'll start. I'll let Mr. Diaz. All right. I'm sure that the cable station will still get my voice. So the first question about what the potential length could be, and for me, it could be a year or several years before they would invite us into feasibility. So what will happen is, if we do not get invited into that stage, then next year, the school district will once again submit the SOI. It is an annual submittal. So you just keep submitting until you get to that stage. And then the second question about the fact that we had just finished a project, certainly the MSBA doesn't like to do two projects at once. However, I will say, I think we are in their good graces. The executive director of MSBA has asked Mr. Diaz and I to present at several functions they've done on the model school program and on how successful it is and how much money it saved the city of Marlborough. So I would say that since we have fully finished that project, it has been audited and have been paid out in some ways, there's really nothing stopping us from asking for the next project. But if we were in the middle of a project right now, I would agree with you. They generally would ask us to finish our projects, pay them out, and then move on to the next one.
I just want to add, in regards to the possibility that we'll be accepted into the program, this is similar, well, it's almost exactly like a competitive grant application, whereas we'll go against all of the other districts asking for a similar project, and the MSBA will prioritize those requests to see where is the highest need. So we may not be selected depending on what the other communities put forward.
And in fact, the last time we went through this process, the MSBA's comments to us was that because the city of Marlborough has taken care of the richer schools so well, that actually counts against us in some ways. And I say that because the way they described it to us, and the way that's been described to me several times, is that they have a limited pool of funds. I believe they get 1% of the sales tax in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So in that 1% of the sales tax that they get to spend on school construction for bonds, they have to operate almost as if it's an emergency room. And they have to take the patient who needs the most first. So when you have a very well-maintained building that is still operational and still functioning every single day, sometimes that counts against you. However, I do believe when they look at our enrollment numbers and they look at what the pressures are going to be happening, I do believe the MSBA is going to look favorably upon a project.
Thank you.
I just don't know if it'll be this year.
No, that's very helpful to kind of understand the process more in depth, and I do remember the opening of the school, and all the folks from the organization were very thrilled, so I can imagine the good relationship is positive for the city. And then sort of a follow-up to this, I know we mentioned that there's a high quality of education happening, which I don't doubt at all in our school system, and kind of wanted to see, so even with the years that might be ahead, what will happen with our current system? Will we be able to continue to maintain absorption of additional students, seeing that trend of increased enrollment is continuing? And then additionally, for current students as well, will we be able to account for some of that in the buildings? I know when the enrollment was discussed about what the cap might be, I mean, a lot of these schools are already over. And so I'm curious if even in the feasibility study, will there be an additional miscalculation going to affect us? So how will they project so that this project will ensure that we don't have the same problem down the line of the enrollment, being so much higher than what's predicted?
Can I answer the first question? Yeah. So to answer the first part of your question, I think it was Superintendent Bergeron that mentioned art rooms, music rooms, those types of spaces would probably be the next space that would be converted to classrooms. And those classes would be art on a cart, music on a cart. Those strategies would be the next thing that we would have to go to. After that would be increase of class size. And I think that is something we've been really trying to fight against, because one of the most successful lessons we learned from the pandemic was the close relationships in the smaller classes. And our classes aren't really small, they're 20 or so for the small size ones. How important that is, especially these days. And so we're really trying to avoid it, but that would be the next strategy.
And I think that also leads to a question that we have, because part of the reason we went with the Goodnow Brothers School, and we went with the model school construction, we knew that we wanted to have a positive effect on class size across the entire district. So as Assistant Superintendent Murphy points out, you will eventually get to a point, if enrollment continues to grow, which we do not have that crystal ball to tell you that. We can only tell you what our experience was this year. If it continues to grow, the pressure on that class size, the issue is that we have no other room. So there really is only one more pressure. You're going to move from 20, 21, 22, 23, and you're going to keep increasing those class sizes. And that, I think, will lead to a lot of parent dissatisfaction. That would be one of my concerns, because elementary schools, a lot of people are looking for that student-to-teacher ratio and the relationship. And if they start seeing the classes become bigger and bigger and bigger, I think that leads to parent dissatisfaction.
Yeah, understand.
And I apologize, Counselor, the second part of your question, I apologize. I wanted to answer it, but
no, it's okay.
I went into class size.
No, and I appreciate the class size, because we know it's such a critical period in the elementary school years. And I similarly even remember all of my elementary school teachers, so I know how important it is. The second part was just about the projection moving forward in the feasibility study. Would the same issue of the enrollment actually being a lot higher than what was projected occur again, or are there any methods that we can implement to ensure that we are factoring that in?
It's a great question. Earlier this year, and actually the past 2 years, Mr. Diaz has been working with a consultant to assist us with a demographic study. And I think it was Dr. McKibben, if I remember right. And Dr. McKibben did not predict the enrollment we had this year. And the traditional methods that we've seen for our enrollment growth have not given us the data that we are seeing right now. So we know it's not from the births in the city. We know it's really not construction. So what's happening is there is a certain amount of transiency within housing that exists in Marlborough that it's turning over in some ways, and more folks are moving into Marlborough. So we're seeing that pretty consistently. And also I think you would see that because the Goodnow School has probably taken the most students in, you would also notice that is the general part of the city that has generated the most enrollment as well. For example, we haven't seen a huge enrollment growth in Kane on the east side of the city, because a lot of those single-family homes have not turned over yet. And I think what Dr. McKibben was saying is when those start turning over, you are going to get a lot more kids into that elementary school, middle school, and high school. So we haven't seen any data that allows us to be predictive about it. And where I'm going with this is the MSBA generally gives us their best effort in their projection. And the agency with the money generally makes the rules. So they will ask you to agree to their enrollment study, and you will because you want the grant. But if you don't agree to their enrollment study, that stops the project in its tracks. So when we look at it, you have to think about they are the agency that's going to be paying 67% of the bill for the building. they're gonna be the ones who say, this is our enrollment study, after looking at every factor we could think of, this is our best guess.
Well, that's extremely helpful, and I know we don't have the crystal ball on that either. I was just curious, too, to see if they were only going to say what you probably will have rather than having a little bit of buffer. And it sounds like they'll do their enrollment study, and then, the city will have to correspond and move forward. But I really appreciate it. I'll yield my time to other counselors and really appreciate all of the work that went into this. And I know it's challenging decisions ahead, but important that we serve the students here in the city.
Thank you, Council Parman. Council Landers.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want as much time as you gave her now.
Absolutely.
If we
Counselor.
didn't put those portable classrooms up in 1992, we wouldn't be having this conversation now. No, just simply, I think we have to realize that this is a double-edged sword. It's the enrollment situation that we have to be concerned about, in the condition of the building. Now, it's a nice building, you're right, it was kept up, and it's always been kept up. But those are two things, it's the enrollment and then the condition. I mean, money probably will have to be spent on Richer when we don't really want to do it, because you're talking 3, 4, 5 years before a youngster will walk in there. But I certainly support the statement here, and I think I'd like to see you people move as quickly as possible on this, though.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Council Landers. Councilor Doucette.
I was going to motion, so we have to limit it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Couple of questions and comments. I completely support this approach. I think that the opportunity that the Goodenow Brothers School did for the community is, anyone that was selling a house in the Goodenow School District had an interesting argument of, oh, they just built a new school for us. So that was driving real estate transactions for that district, because people were thinking, having a hiring, like, oh, it'd be easy to sell because we just got a new school. And that created the families to move into those neighborhoods, which increased the people, so the new school basically probably increased the number of students in the class. I think your biggest argument to go up to MSBA is basically, you said it would be 2,260 by 26. Here we are in 22, and we're well past that. So we were believing you until now. So I think that's a good argument that you guys can do. I'm assuming that at this point, whether or not it's going to be a new school or retrofit will be coming out of the analysis, right? But if the Richer School is going to be retrofitted, whatever need would be done, would it be done? How much would the school be offline while that work is being done? Do you think, or is it too early to say, or is this something that could be done like in a extended summer schedule to get the work done, or possibly sometimes while the school is still in work?
Thank you, Council. That's a great question. While we don't know right now, we would have to think about a renovation of the Richer School would require certain decisions. Having a phased building project over several summers will increase the price of the construction. So one of the questions that the community would probably have to grapple with at that point when we're ready to look at actual construction is going to be, where can we house the students during construction? Or are we going to have a construction site and students on the same site? Those are questions that you're going to have to grapple with. And every community grapples with this. I've worked in other communities that have done similar projects on an elementary school with renovation, and they created a modular school in the parking lot of the school to serve the students while the construction was ongoing, so that way they could give the site to the construction company and not have any concerns with having kids in construction on the same site. So those are all questions that while we are too early, you're absolutely right, that is some of the questions we're going to have to answer. We've been thinking about what flex space do we have in the school system. So for example, we have 16 classrooms at the Hildreth School, and we've been working hard to keep up the Hildreth School, keep it maintained, make the technology up to date with what we're seeing in our schools. So we've been thinking about this for quite a bit. But what will happen is if we are selected as a statement of interest that the MSBA wants to pursue, then we would go into the same feasibility study that we did 2015 through 2017 to find out a lot of these questions and start to get answers. So while we don't have the answer today, those are all valid questions. We're going to have to think about what it's going to look like for a construction process, what we would do, where we would house students, and what that would look like.
Okay, thank you for that. That's a great explanation. The other question I have, just because it seems that this is going to take a couple of years to figure out what's going to go forward. In the meantime, we still have lots of students that are getting squeezed. So what sort of other options are there for our school system? Should we be, or are you folks considering doing a K-4 for the, elementary school, and then the middle school be 5 through whatever, to kind of off-shift some of the children from the schools just to kind of balance the load? Is that a viable alternative at this point? I know it was discussed before.
Yeah, actually, Counselor, thank you for bringing that up. That was actually the alignment of schooling we had before the Goodnow Brothers. So before we had the Goodnow Brothers online, we had 5 through 8 at Wickham, and we had K through 4 at our elementary schools. When we brought Goodnow online, specifically, one of the major goals of that was to bring 5th grade back down to the elementary. And partially the reason is because at 5th grade, even though they were at Wickham, they were being taught an elementary curriculum, and they were still primarily in an elementary alignment in terms of their classrooms and teachers. So where the 6 through 8 had more of a middle school feel, 5th grade had their own schedule and their own times for the way that they exchange the students between math, science, and the humanities. So when we made that decision to specifically bring 5th grade back, I myself would not recommend having 5th grade go back to Wickham. One of the other things is that although we did pull all of the close to 400 students out of Wickham, we still have 1,200, I'm not saying, maybe 1,150. So our Wickham enrollment is still 1,150 students.
Can I add to that too? The upcoming classes are well over 400 for each grade level. So that means that Whitcomb will be at least 1,200 students from multiple years. Moving forward, they are adding a team at each grade level. So there's basically not enough room for 5th grade at this point.
And one of the reasons we were adding the teams at the middle school level, again, was to really focus on class size. It was very important to us. We had class sizes of 25, 26, 27. I know Assistant Superintendent Murphy was the principal of the Wickham School during that time. She had class sizes of 30, 31, 32 in her specials. We are trying to get that back to a much more normalized class size of between 19 and 22, all the way through the Wickham School. And we will be able to do that. So we wouldn't recommend doing that. And again, we're not in a position right now where we would be coming forward to the council and asking for like a modulars or anything at this point. We have room, and we certainly have used our room. We're getting obviously full, that's why we're here tonight. But we're not at a place of panic, if you will, if that helps.
Thank you.
Okay. One more thing, Superintendent Bergeron. The city appreciates the work you've done for our community, and it's a loss to see you leave. I just needed to make that public, so thank you very much.
I appreciate that.
Councilor Dumas?
Motion to approve?
I will second that. Motion has been approved and seconded for order number 22-100-8551, statement of interest from Marlborough Public Schools to the Massachusetts School Building Authority, MSBA, relative to the Richer School. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Oh,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Council Austin, President Austin.
Mr. Bergeron, you made a very interesting comment that I would like to have you elaborate on regarding construction and enrollment. Could you just shed some insight as to the increased enrollment, and do they impact some of the projects that the city has been approving? In other words, can you put whereabouts the enrollment is coming from?
Sure. I can elaborate on that. When we are looking at our enrollment that's coming in from new students, we haven't seen any large enrollment increases from I would say the recent projects. And for us, recent projects would probably be the Talia project, the Avalon project, and some of those. We haven't seen large increases of students from those properties or those addresses. I would say the majority of our enrollment is in the center of the city, and within a certain mile radius. I would say a lot of our multifamily houses are generating more of the enrollment than the single-family homes and/or the new construction.
No, I'm good. Thank you very much. Thank you,
Thank you,
Mr. Chair.
President Rossi. Motion has been made and seconded to approve. All, Councilor?
Just, were we going to add the suspension
Yes,
in this
yeah.
motion, or are we doing it after the motion?
We can add it after the motion.
Okay, I would like that added, if that's okay with the sponsor.
All in favor? It carries 5-0, and the committee's okay for a suspension on this? We're good.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Bergeron.
Thank you.
Okay, second item this evening is order number 22-108-567, MEDC FY 2023 operation budget in the amount of $589,691. And I will begin by reading the letter submitted by the mayor. Honorable President Ossing and councils, enclosed for your review and approval is a transfer request in the amount of $589,691 from the Economic Development Funds to the Marlborough Economic Development Corporation, MEDC, to fund the operations for fiscal year 2023 as approved by Executive Committee. The total operating budget is for $691,391 as outlined in the attached budget summary. In addition to the full operating budget, the MEDC is requesting an additional $75,000 to replenish the economic toolbox, and the toolbox is vital in helping secure new business growth and retain companies. This assistance also made a big impact during the COVID when businesses were struggling to stay afloat. And sincerely, Arthur G. Vigent, Mayor, and I will bring Director Harris up and her team, if you would like. And also for the committee members, we will be discussing the toolbox, but at this point, a transfer has not come down, but we can certainly discuss that. Good evening, Director Harris.
Thank you very much for having us.
Nice to see everyone.
Nice to see you as
Congratulations
well.
to you and your family.
Thank you very
It's good to have
much.
you this evening on a Thursday night. Thank you.
Happy to be here. Once again, it's our pleasure to be in front of all of you with our FY23 budget. We're very proud of the work we do at MEDC and very excited to be here to talk to you guys about it, answer any questions, and we'll leave it at that. Open it up for the floor.
Thank you very much, Director. I will open that to the committee first. Any questions?
Yeah.
Councilor Dumas.
Thank you. I'll start. So I appreciate the breakdown. It was very clear to see. I just a little no, seriously, it's very well put together. And I guess just a few, just to elaborate on a few things on the contracted services, there's a media contractor. Could you just elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yep, the media contractor, most of you know her as Jill Morin.
Okay.
So that's where we do the digital marketing. That's that line item. So any of the work that Jill's doing is coming from that item right there.
Okay. So if we cut that, then Jill's out. I'm kidding. And then my last question, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair, the media buy branding company, or campaign,
The
excuse
campaign.
me, yeah.
So it's really just any of our branding that we do. So any of the materials that we put together when we're going out, promoting Marlborough, the flyers, the different things that you see, the ads in the paper,
Okay.
advertisements, things like that. That's called our Think Marlborough Media Buy Branding Campaign.
Do you use someone local for that?
Say that again?
Do you use someone local for that, or is that outsourced?
We do, so we use Doreen
yeah,
House,
Minuteman Press.
Blue Sky. Doreen does a lot of work for us, but that one really just encompasses all the marketing that we're doing for the city in particular.
Sure.
So any of the materials we're putting together to sell the city of Marlborough, it's all underneath that bucket right there.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Dumas. Any other questions? Council Perlman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and so great to see you all. Congratulations, Meredith, as well, and you and your family. I have a quick question as well, so kind of going towards the, I guess, the page with the payroll expenses. I know it says there's an administrative assistant to be filled April 2022, and was just curious if this is something that's a new position. I know it's April right now. Is there someone on the line, just given that this line item is within the budget request?
So the position has been temporarily filled. We brought somebody in to help cover while I'm out on leave, that we're hoping will stick around when I come back. But we've always had 4 FTEs in that role. We've kind of shifted responsibilities and roles over the years. With the addition of Lindsay Jowrick last year, Linda and myself, we kind of phased out there was a deputy director at one point. We're starting to realize that might not necessarily be the role that we need. Lindsay's going to be taking on some of those responsibilities to backfill, and then we really need somebody to help with administrative support.
Okay, thank you, that's really helpful. And then, I guess this is on the page, it's a budget summary with the breakdown on the special projects. I was just wondering if you could give more context on some of the breakdowns, particularly I know there's the urban village and community development, there's a lot of attention to downtown, and wondering, I know that's like the lowest amount on that indication for special projects, and was curious if there's movement to increase that number in the future and what that might be used for.
So you're looking specifically at the downtown and French Hill beautification?
No, I'm in special projects, urban village and community development, 10,000, which
Yep.
might be the same thing on the regular budget, so.
Yep, so that's the downtown French Hill beautification. That's projects that you've seen in the past, like the blade signs, different things to try and help elevate the brand of the downtown area. A couple years ago, we extended that up until the French Hill neighborhood. What are they, the flags that you see on the light posts?
Veteran banners.
The veterans banners, things of that nature, a lot of the plantings, the landscaping, different things that you see downtown.
Seasonal flags. We work with the DPW to determine
What projects should go forward.
Okay, but that's an allocation that comes from your budget, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
That's helpful as well. And then I guess kind of continuing on that, the kind of breakdown where I know we're not, I guess, doing the transfer for the toolbox right now, but I just had a question. I know it's been an extremely beneficial program, a lot of businesses during the pandemic, and knowing that those funds are available. And I know it says, 33 establishments in the city and the job growth. Are those information about that program, like its success and the beneficiaries, like public information that we get to highlight, or businesses share that they're part of that program, or is it something that's more internal?
No, we celebrate it. We want everyone to know exactly who's taking advantage of the programs, and we actually have invited all of the recipients to come back. We have a toolbox video that we produced last year that actually they came on and gave testimonials for the program. But it's all, either small business that it was existing in the city that's taken advantage of those funds, or new business that we're trying to draw into the community that didn't necessarily qualify for some of those larger state programs. So through the toolbox, we've been able to retain just about 300, to add 300 jobs, to retain about 75, and help about 34 businesses come in.
No, that's really great, and I know some of the beneficiaries, even watching the videos I know you all produce, it's really great to hear how successful that's been, and I know how much those resources are appreciated. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Council Perlman. Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of questions, and thank you for coming up, and congratulations again. So one of the first comment I said, just going through the price, the hourly rate for the intern is $4.25. There's a lot of, low minimum wages is now $16, $17. So it's probably too late now, but you should next year consider comparing that to what the rates are for, retail stores and stuff like that. Just make sure you get a better quality person, because if someone's really looking for money, it's the difference between working at you and versus Price Chopper or something.
Sure.
As a reference point. Also, I know that prior to the pandemic, there was a lot of work with conferences and meetings. Now that we're in post-pandemic, how has that landscape changed? I mean, is it as big as it was, or is it all Zoomish type things?
So we're excited to see that it's coming back. So we haven't seen,
Slowly.
any of the traveling, the conferences, the events, the, trade shows, things like that. We really haven't attended much in person over the last 2 years, which is why that line item, we've been able to carry over the funds for the 2-year period.
Okay,
But we do see that those conferences, trade shows, the things across the country are happening again.
Okay.
So a lot of the ones that we've attended in the past that we've been able to have success at, we're looking forward to being able to go back
In
and
person.
do that in person, correct?
okay,
Yep.
okay, good. Good, yeah, I think that MADC is one of the great assets of the community as
Thank you.
far as, developing a presence of Marlborough, building awareness and, collecting or getting businesses to come work, do business here. So appreciate the work that you folks do, and hopefully you can continue doing it for a while. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I've never had an issue with the MADC budget. I think I've always supported it. I think we get a good bang for our buck with what you do there. So I'm curious, I think this is the first time that the toolbox is not included in the budget, and why it's not, and if that's not true, how did you do the toolbox things that you've done? And is the plan to then do another transfer from the transfer that the money's coming from, or is there I'm confused why it's not in here. And maybe the mayor can answer the
Thank you,
question.
Councilor. I will
Came to
direct that question to the mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. First of all, I want to welcome Meredith. She's got a 7-day-old baby at home, and it's so important for her, and that's why she's so good at what she does with her and her team all coming tonight. So thank you for coming. But so it's in my letter that we were sending down a transfer for $75,000. We neglected to put it in the transfer sheet. So that's an error on our part, and we'll be sending it down at the next meeting, so.
And it's from the same
You can ask the
funding?
questions about it now if you want, or you can wait till the transfer comes down, but there'll be an additional transfer from the rooms tax money for this.
Okay, so then I guess the question is, in the past, was it not part of the budget?
It was in the beginning.
And so why is it being pulled out separately this time? Why didn't you just add?
I mean, we could do it either way. I mean, we've done, when we had the Walker Building feasibility study, we did it similarly. We don't expect to have to do this every single year. So we're trying to kind of separate the two, as this is a grant program. It's not part of our operating budget.
Okay.
It's money that we're granting out to businesses. So just looking at it a little differently as we move forward and grow.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Roby. Councilor Orm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome. Night out, maybe, maybe not.
They promised to take me out after. So.
You deserve it. And we'll have schools sufficiently ready for your children when they do get to that age. Just a question, and you did a great job again itemizing everything, and you did itemize and justify the health, dental, retirement, as well as employers' payroll tax and workers' compensation. Question, do you do that outside of the city, or do you ever consider using city services for some of that to help reduce cost?
I don't believe that's an option for us.
Okay, probably not, but just someday I'd be curious, maybe I'll do a cost-benefit analysis just to see, I don't know, is your retirement something like mass retirement, or is it totally a separate?
Nope, we have a simple IRA that is.
So it's not what other.
Correct, we're not part of the pension fund.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see, and to be honest with you, in all fairness, you're working pretty much for the city, so it's unfortunate you can't have the benefit of a mass retirement plan.
Right.
And here, it's the Marlborough retirement system, but
But I think that's a benefit for the city, right, to have us.
it's a very nice
Separate.
option to have as an employee of a government, might it be federal, state, or local, is to have that retirement pension plan. But again, just curious, cost-benefit analysis, are you spending more than what we would spend if you were in-house? And I brought that up before, the consideration, I'm not trying to take MEDC out of the equation, that's a long process if that ever comes, but no matter what, your positions are needed. Might it be in-house or with MEDC as a para-city agency. So in any way, I'm just curious if it's a cost benefit to have it outside of the city or within the city. So that's a long-term process, but thank you for your answers. And
Sure.
again, thank you for your services too.
Great, thank you.
Councilor Wagner.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify the comment about minimum wage. $14.25 was the minimum wage as of January 1st, 2022, but as of January 1st, 2023, the state minimum wage is $15 an hour, so that will need to be factored into this budget.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wagner. Councilor Perman.
Thank you, and I apologize. I thought of another question while folks were talking. I guess two pieces. One, I think in the past we talked about like how much the lease is in the current location. I think it's so central, and I love having you all there. I think it's a good place to be within the downtown. I was just curious if that's continuing to be the location moving forward, even after this budget cycle, and I think it was the last budget that came up for discussion about how much money was going towards the rent.
We do have, is it 2 years left on our lease?
We have a lease to.
We have a lease that
Okay.
we've signed, so I don't think it's something we're considering at this time. But if it's something that the executive committee would like to look at, we'd be happy to look at it.
Okay, and you said 2 more years on the lease. I was just curious about that. And then the other question, just because we just came off the schools, and I know you all also help support a lot of promotion of the schools, does that fall under the branding campaign, or where would that locate itself in the budget?
Yes.
Materials related to the schools?
That's part of the Think Marlborough.
Okay.
Anything Marlborough.
Yeah, and really the Think Marlborough campaign that's just our fun name for, trying to bring people to the city and promote the city. Anything that has to do with the city, that's where that comes from.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. I also would like to say thank you to Meredith Linder and Lindsay as well for the staff. Anytime I would call, the support is amazing. As residents know, going forward with any economic plans, looking forward to the summer of outdoor seating, the food truck festival with the cultural, with the art mixed in there has been an amazing event, and to hear people talk about that in other communities is definitely a plus. So thank you very much.
We have a wonderful team.
Yes, you do.
We do.
Absolutely.
Very lucky.
If no further, Councilor Dumas.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. I will second that motion. Motion has been made and seconded to approve order number 100-8567, MEDC's FY 2023 operating budget in the amount of $589,691. Any further discussion? Councilor Doucette.
Back to the minimum wage question, is that something that you guys can cover, or is that something that we actually need to take into account for the internship?
It's for the summertime.
It's for a summer intern. If we need to bring it up, we could just reduce the hours. We actually are unsure if we're going to have an intern this summer.
Okay,
but
that's fine, just, it was, okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, motions are made and seconded. All in favor? It carries 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so up next is order number 22-100-8536A, capital improvement plan, bonds, and transfer requests totaling $19,910,000 from Mayor Vigil as follows. And the first one is a request for appropriation of $500,000 for the purpose of paying the cost of reconstruction or making extraordinary repairs to Sligo Hill water tank. And I'll read the letter submitted by the mayor. Honorable President Ossing and councilors, enclosed for your review and approval is this year's capital improvement plan totaling $19,910,000. Included in this amount are 3 bond requests totaling $6,675,000 to cover the cost of refurbishing the Sligo Hill water tank, water main replacement, street and infrastructure upgrades. Part of the bond package will include $5,175,000 allocated for street repair and essential upgrades that will continue our long-term infrastructure investment. I've included an itemized street list based on need and planned utility upgrades. There is $1,872,000 allocated to public safety that is being disseminated through the police department public safety account, ARPA funds, and free cash outlined is enclosed. Additionally, I've enclosed a transfer request in the amount of $1,448,100 from free cash to fund the following capital items: fire squad truck, refurbishing pools, Evergreen Cemetery expansion project, school HVAC upgrades, Reservoir Street bump out, and public works equipment. The enclosed FY 2022 capital improvement plan outline distinguishes fund allocations for your review. Appropriate department heads will plan to be available to discuss these items in more details for future meetings. Sincerely, Arthur G. Vigent, Mayor. And we'll bring up the first bond, which is for the $500,000 for Sligo Hill. And we did get that in our package for the Finance Committee, the order, as well as describing what is proposed for the bonding of that amount. And I will open it up for any questions that the Finance will have. Councilor Duvall, thank you, Director. Thank you, Commissioner Duvall.
Good evening.
Good evening, Commissioner.
Thanks for inviting me. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
So on the first one is for the Sligo Hill bond. And I guess the question is, I know the mayor sent down, I'm sorry, you sent down, very helpful, why we had to bond the 500,000 because of the maintenance part of it, or not knowing what has to be repaired. If you could kind of explain that just a little bit.
Sure. So, the total project cost is $1.5 million.
Correct.
So 500,000 is coming from bond, $1 million from ARPA. And essentially what the project is this will actually be the first year of what will be a 15 to 20-year tank maintenance program. And so year one funds through this 1.5 million are geared towards some pretty major rehabilitation of the Sligo Hill tank. And so that's why it's listed in the way it is. But going forward, years 2 through up to 20, it'll be a recurring expense that we will request to be funded through our operating budget.
For the operating budget.
And so what it is basically it kind of levels out our payments to have a program in place that maintains the tanks for the period of time of the contract. Versus having, essentially no intervention into a tank and then finding out we have problems and then going through a request for major capital funds for a design build project. This is one where essentially we'd be paying like a condo fee. So we pay a lot up front to get the Sligo Hill tank complete. But then the other two tanks and Sligo, after it's rehabilitated, will be maintained as part of this contract. And when I say maintain, what that often means is inspections, cleaning, repainting, any welds that need to be re-welded to take care of that. And then in future years, when there may need to be a new paint job on these tanks, it'll be sort of factored in. So it levels out how much we have to pay over the period of time of the contract, and it becomes a predictable cost. Because when we will open proposals very shortly, it'll be listed out over the term of the contract how much the city will pay for all of the services that we've requested in the RFP. And it's an interesting program, one that was recently authorized by the state legislature to do it in this way. Typically, we don't see contracts greater than a 3-year period, where this is a 15 to 20-year period. The state recognizes that this is a great program to be in, where the costs are spread out over the contract duration and they're predictable. And the end result is we have tanks that are very well maintained for a long period of time.
Thank you, Commissioner Duvall. I'll open, Councilor Dumas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it's 1.5, and how much do you think the maintenance costs will be moving forward? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah. So we'll find out, because we just, proposals were due today, and we have not opened them yet. We have some estimates, and I've got my team here that have a little bit more depth of knowledge on this. But I think we've seen payments. Chris, do you remember? Estimates?
Hi, so this is a shot in the dark because we're not really sure how these companies are gonna really lay out what they, how they want to pay for this work, but my best guess for the 3 tanks, we're going to be looking between $100,000 and $125,000 a year to take care of the annual inspection, painting, power washing, any safety improvements that may come up, and then money to finance future paint jobs that we expect.
Thank you.
Councilor.
Thank you, and that was one of my questions, actually, to the annual cost, and we'll probably see that very soon. You're opening up the bids, I heard. How many companies were there that bid?
We had 3 respondents.
Okay. And has any other city or town entertained a contractual obligation for yearly maintenance for a length of?
There are several Massachusetts communities that have done this. And we have actually reached out to those communities and learned a lot about the process and got to benefit from their lessons learned. City of West Springfield is one that we've talked to a lot, and I know the commissioner there quite well. So we're able to tap into that knowledge and found that it's a fantastic program. And it's curious to me why other communities are not doing it, and maybe they will. It may be the start of the growth here throughout the Commonwealth. So very interested in it.
And curious, you said it's like a condo fee, but with the condo fee, sometimes the roof may go and all of a sudden there's a surcharge to the condo fee. Is this the same process that if we see our tank failing in a critical way at one of our tanks, that we may see another request for a capital bond?
No. So this would be a situation here in a program where we could, where we would eliminate that risk because we'll have regular maintenance. We'll have eyes on it each and every year. And so where a tank is really not that complicated, we shouldn't see those sorts of major repairs come up. And so, but I will say that in a 5-year cycle or something, we will find that there will be additional needs other than painting and sealing, just because it's the nature of infrastructure. But it won't be a giant spike. We wouldn't see a number of this magnitude, a $1.5 million magnitude, come up again because we will have done the regular maintenance.
To me, then, it makes sense. Preventive maintenance, basically, through a contract. But it's not an insurance policy. There could be that small possibility, but with preventive maintenance, you're more or less saying we should be in good shape versus if we did not have this type of contract. Again, that'll be for another day for us to look at those numbers, but thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilor Roby.
Thank you. Thank you for coming to get questions for us. I guess I'm a little confused because I heard the comment tanks. This is for a tank, is my understanding. It's for the Sligo Hill tank. So were the comments about this money being used for all the tanks?
So there are 3 tanks as contemplated as part of this program.
Are they all part of Sligo Hill, or are they separate?
So as part of the program, we have all 3 of the city's tanks as part of the program. Year 1 is funded up front for the rehabilitation we need to do at Sligo Hill. There's also some amount of effort in there, some amount of money that is used to inspect the other 2 tanks. But once we get to years 2 and beyond, then the maintenance fee, the condo fee, if you will pay for the maintenance of all 3 tanks.
Okay.
And that'll continue on throughout the duration of the contract. There will be other tanks that'll come up for a little heavier maintenance, and so in those years, the condo fee will be a little bit higher. The assessment, I think, is what you said, Counselor. But it's predictable. It'll be in the proposals that we open shortly. We'll know what those costs are. And we have factored in some amount for inflation as well, because that's a question that's come up.
Okay, so in the information that we received from the mayor's office, it says that the water tank project is broken up and the 1.5 is the maintenance program in addition to the rehab. And the maintenance program can't be bonded. So my guess is that's the 500,000 is not the maintenance program, which means the $1 million is the maintenance program, which is stated as being paid for by ARPA money. So how can you spread ARPA money out over 20 years?
Well, because this, as I said, this project is front-loaded for the first year. to spend most of the money, almost all of the money, on Sligo Hill Tank. So that's where the ARPA money comes into play there. It's
So
not-
will we expect $1 million request in the budget for the next 20 years for maintenance of the tanks?
Oh, I would expect that you'd see a request of 200,000, we'll say, and we'll find out again, we don't know, these are estimates, but it won't be $1 million every year.
Okay. And why, if you've got ARPA money, and maybe this is a question more for the mayor, why isn't the whole thing just being paid for with ARPA money instead of bonding 500,000?
I can't answer that.
I guess that's my question, but.
President Ossie.
No, I have a similar question. I mean, I would rather be, when the council approved the ARPA grant back in December, there's 4 things you can use ARPA money for, according to the mayor's letter. Addressing public health emergencies, investment in water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure, revenue loss due to the pandemic, or premium paid for essential workers. So this bond, as well as the next one, why do I want to pay all the interest charges when, if I can use ARPA money for them? I mean, the council should think hard about it. We should really use the ARPA money to pay this, because, again, Patrick can tell me if it's different. I just used 3% interest rate. It's a 30-year bond. That $500,000 is going to cost us an extra $270 million. $270,000. The interest rates aren't that high yet. So, I would rather pay this all out of the ARPA funds as opposed to bonding it. I mean, that's assuming, well, and I'll let Diane and Patrick, they can tell us if it's right or wrong, if there's additional guidance we're not aware of, but bonding something that's specifically called out for ARPA money, I think would be an appropriate use of the funding source.
Thank you, President Ossie. Mr. Merritt, good evening.
Thank you. As far as the ARPA money goes, this is a breakdown of where we intend on spending the ARPA money. Basically, the requirements for ARPA were, as President Ossing said, they had the breakdown of where you could spend it. Since then, there's been a change where the government said that the first $10 million of your ARPA money is basically going to be considered loss of revenue, and you can use it for any expenditures you want. So the only thing we really had to put in one of those categories was $1,500. That was it. So we basically did that with the pump station. So the ARPA money's covered. We could use the $10 million for anything we wanted. So we broke it down this way, again, as Councilor Ossing said, to try to cut down on the bonds as much as possible. So, but again, the ARPA money has been accepted by the council, and this is for informational purposes to accept and file as far as that column goes.
Thank you, Mayor Vigil. Any further question? Council Perlman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question, I know this is something that probably needs to be done. I guess I'm wondering how much of a timeliness this is. It hasn't been, put forth in a budget request in the past. Is it because there's additional ARPA funds available that now is the time that this is being brought up? Or I guess when's the last time that the Sligo Hill tank has been addressed?
I think the last substantial work, and I don't know how extensive it was done, was in the early 90s. We've had several annual inspection reports of the tank done since then that have all noted some deficiencies that needed to be addressed. So we've known for quite some time that this tank is at the top of the list for rehabilitation. Why it hasn't been funded in the past, I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Council Perlman. Any, Councilor?
Motion to approve.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve order number 22-100-8536A, request for appropriation of $500,000 for the purpose of paying the cost of reconstruction and repairs to Sligo Hill water tank. Any further discussion? Councilor?
Can I just, and I maybe it's another opinion, but I keep reading lots of articles in the paper of cities and towns, city councils or select boards approving ARPA money. So why in this list of ARPA money does it include $2 million for a walking trail on Lake Williams, $150,000 for a dog park, and $500,000 for a deck hockey that we as a council have no say on, when that money could be used to pay for this bond and the next bond? I personally don't get it.
Mr. Chair?
President Ossie.
So again, the council approved the ARPA money. We didn't attach any strings to it. I believe it was Councilor Perlman said that, we're going to get a report of what we're going to spend it on. We can put an order in that says monthly, we'd like the auditor, just like she does with the other accounts, to say, here's all the new accounts that we've tagged for ARPA and how it's being spent, but the council gave away some of its authority when it said, go ahead and spend the money.
All we did was accept it.
We approved the grant.
Thank you, Mr. President. We did approve it. What we can also do, I can communicate with the mayor, and I can have him send down a spreadsheet of what some of the funds are going
Have
to.
it.
I mean,
We have the
correct, we
spreadsheet.
do have that in there to keep the council updated. I mean, we could certainly do that. Council Perlman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to echo Councilor Roby's comments. It does feel like, I know other communities have also done a public input process to see what there might be interest with. I know the ARPA funds are to be used for a wide variety of things, and we've seen, I think, more leeway as there's been more information coming out about what ARPA can be used for. And so it seems maybe premature. I don't know if even going through this, do we have to approve them all one by one or be able to have the discussion about all of them before voting on each individual item?
Not individual items. President Ossie.
So, Mr. Chair, so Councilor Perlman, ARPA's not on our budget tonight, so we can mention it, but there's nothing for us to vote on ARPA. There's 3 bonds and free cash, that's it. So if there's something you really want there, we're gonna have to go back, reconsider, and submit an order going forward. But there's nothing for the Finance Committee to do with ARPA tonight. I mean, it's just based on what decisions we made in the past.
David's right.
But if I can make a point of order, I believe the bonds require 8 votes, and if we don't approve the bonds, then the mayor will have to rethink what he's using the ARPA money for.
That's correct, Councilor. Thank you. And thank you, President Ossie, because to reiterate what you said, what's before us, Council Perlman, is what these orders are. But good point, Councilor Roby. Okay, motion has been made and seconded. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, it carries. 3, 2, all opposed? 2, thank you. Carries 3-2. Okay, next up is order number 22-100-8536B. Request for appropriation in the amount of $1 million for the proposed of paying the cost of water main construction or reconstruction. Construction or reconstruction. And we have the right people up tonight for that, and I'll let you open that up on some of the maintenance and reconstruction of those water mains, and I'll let you get started, Chris, as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, as you may recall, we have about 180 miles of water main within the city of Marlborough, and all with various ages and conditions. And as you might expect, there's quite a bit of water mains that are old and either in need of rehab or replacement. And so we're looking forward here in looking at a plan where we can kind of chip away, kind of make the improvements that we need to make, and do that in a cost-efficient manner. So before you tonight is $1 million for work that we are considering here for this year with council's approval. But I also want to mention that in future years, we will be back before you with a request for an equal amount or perhaps more, depending on what our needs are. So this shouldn't be a surprise, and I want to just put it out there that we need to make continual investments in our infrastructure. And this is a commitment I want to make to the city that we will do that. And so, it's through the approval of the city council that we can do this. And this is, year one of what we'll say will be a number of years where we're going to want, or request, I should say, a good amount of money here to make those investments.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I know too, going forward with a lot of construction or reclaiming a road or whatever, it's good to have these processes in place to go forward to prevent anything and the age of some of the utilities. So it's a great process to start. I'll open that up to the committee. So, oh, Council Gibbons.
Do you know what area we'll be working on for this water main break?
Sure. So my main focus, my main concern is some of the older 6-inch, 4-inch cast iron unlined pipe that we have in the city. They're circa 1890, 1900. And when you cut these pipes open, the interior diameter of the pipe is very small. It's really enclosed, and that restricts fire flow. Can cause discoloration in neighborhoods if we don't do extensive flushing in the area. So those undersized older mains are my main focus, and we have a series of them. We have a ton of them in the older parts of town. We also have a lot of asbestos concrete water main that was installed in the 1960s. Where the individual water services, where they connect to these mains, that interface, that saddle, they corrode often. And I would say up to half of the water main breaks that you folks hear about in the city are those saddles blowing off of those asbestos concrete mains. So those are my tackling those saddles and those older mains in the city are my priority, and we do have a series of streets that we want to start. But again, there's a ton of them. It's going to be I'd like it to be an every year thing where we chip away at them and constantly try to make a dent in getting rid of them.
Thank you.
Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. There's a lot of work going on Route 20 right now because it's basically preparation for the highway rework done. Are you doing the water mains there as well? Is that considered part of this?
We are. There's an asbestos concrete water main out there, and that's being replaced in its entirety as part of that project. It's one of the first phases after the Eversource gets done with their gas main out there. They're going to start on that.
Okay, so you guys haven't started on 20 yet, or have you?
We have not started. That's imminent, I would say. We're waiting on the contractor to get materials, sufficient materials to start the project, but we're already in discussion with the awarded contractor on that project.
So how much of 20 is going to be affected? Is this going to be like a Sudbury line to Peters Ave, or a fair chunk of that, or majority, or?
Yeah, basically from Hager Street to Peters Ave. We're replacing that entire main, so you'll see activity through that whole corridor.
Okay, but how long is that project going to last? People are going to ask me, that's why I know when
I think, I'm guessing, I haven't seen Tom DePercy, the city engineer, might have a better idea on the schedule, but for most of this year, I would say they'll be installing the water main out there.
Okay, great, thank you for that, I appreciate it.
Councilor Orem.
Thank you. So on this one, the intent is to take $1 million and bond it, and we just heard the cost of bonding for the $500,000. Curious if there was any consideration of using ARPA funds for this project. And if you can't answer it, maybe the mayor can, if I may, Mr. Chair.
No.
Okay, he doesn't want to, so I don't want to put them. Oh, okay. You cannot use ARPA funds for the water main?
No, we could use it for anything.
That's what I thought, okay.
The first $10 million.
So the no is really that you can use ARPA funds if you so wish, but it wasn't used in the request, I guess. Is that what I'm reading, hearing properly? Just so I know what I'm hearing. And I understand the intent from the last vote as well. The cost of the bond, obviously, you said around, if I may, to the president, for $1 million, are we expecting over $500,000?
Mr. Chair?
If I may, Mr. Chair, to the president?
Yes,
Yep,
Mr.
so
President.
again, so for sewer, it's a 40-year bond. If you assume 3%, and if Patrick or Diane tell me there's a different interest rate, but I just use 3%, you'd end up paying $742,000 in interest, so your $1 million bond is now $1.7 million spread out over 40 years, which is a $43,000 a month. I didn't do
I
that.
know that, I appreciate the general estimates. It's starting to
Sorry,
make me...
$43,000 a year on the, well, not to scratch that. You got to pay back 1.7 million versus the 1 million if it came out of ARPA. I guess that's the cleanest way to say it.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, if I may, I'm torn over the funds to use and having a project not go forward at the same time. You know, it's in my head to debate that. You know, I don't want to see Sligo Hill not be completed, you know, and have another bigger problem down the road, but I respect the councilor's concerns about using ARPA versus bonding. So I'm a little torn by it, but I got my answer from the mayor, so I don't have to put you two on the spot. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilor Navin, good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner, I apologize. I had to step out right as you were introducing this, so if you already said this, I apologize. It seems like there have been, and I have not been here long enough, but it seems as though the amount of water breaks we've had lately have increased. Is that accurate? Does the department do a kind of look back to see if there's an increase in water main breaks year over year, and are we seeing an increase?
So we've had that question come up, and the answer is no. We're not seeing more water main breaks than we have in the past. What has happened recently is we have communicated them more.
Which is appreciated, certainly.
Right, and so there's a perception that there's more, but there really isn't. It's just that we're getting the message out, and people are receiving that and thinking that there's more.
Okay, and do you find that when there is one break, that it ends up causing problems further down the line, creating additional breaks, and that there's sometimes those can cause kind of a ripple effect?
That certainly can happen.
That's
yes.
Okay. I am very happy to see this investment being made. I am sure that it is a drop in the bucket, pun intended, for just the amount of maintenance that needs to be done on this work. Is this something that's limited by capacity for the work to get done, or by funding? And I guess the second part, is this something that's done in-house, or will this be contracted out?
So to the first part of your question, certainly with more funding, we can do more work. There is a limit on how much we can practically do.
Right.
Because, we do the design work in-house. We do the bidding in-house, and we do the construction, administration, inspection in-house. So there's a limit there on the power that we have in the office to get that done.
Of course.
The other part is also having all of these construction projects going on simultaneously all throughout the community.
Yeah.
That can be a burden as well.
Yeah. Well, I think that's an important point. Right? People look at the amount of deferred maintenance and older infrastructure and want to see, investments made, and they want to know, why can't it all be done tomorrow? I think it's an important point to bring up that, these things take time, and they have impact on your traffic, they have impact on, the amount that we have to bond for them. But I appreciate you folks taking a look and realizing that this unseen infrastructure is just as important as what's on top of the road, so I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr.
Councilor
Chair.
Navin. I also like to add, too, it's good to have the city being proactive, going in the future, when there's roads getting repaired or whatever, going in there and getting that work done, similar to like on Lincoln Street. Obviously, it doesn't always work in that plan to be proactive in some of those, but considering some of the ages of the system, I'm glad to see going forward with that. So thank you, Commissioner. Any further discussion? If not, I will entertain a motion. Seeing none? I think that's one of my first times, Mr. President.
Well, Mr. Chair, so as a finance committee, you got to take a position, so you either got to make a motion to approve it or not approve it. You got to take a
And
position.
I was thinking the same thing, Mr. President. We need to make a motion one way or the other, so the motion would be to approve, and I'll make that motion.
Absolutely. And to
With the notice I made about bond versus non-bonding.
I'm sorry, what's that, Councilor?
Just with the notice that I'm taking into account bonding
Yep.
versus non-bonding and use of ARPA funds with this vote.
And it takes 8 votes for the bond.
Yes,
So I
understandable.
will second that motion. So motion has been made and seconded to approve order number 22-100-8536B, request for appropriation in the amount of $1 million for the purpose of paying the cost of water main construction or reconstruction. Any further discussion? Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. This investment in the water infrastructure directly impacts Route 20. And if there's a delay of that construction for us to put down the water main, that's going to delay the construction of the Route 20 project. I understand the concern of bond versus non-bond, but there's going to be a lot of angry citizens if the Route 20 project is delayed. Just wanted to put that out there.
Mr. Chair, can I just respond to
yes,
that?
absolutely.
I just want to make
Commissioner
sure we're
Wall.
clear. So the Route 20 water main project that we just talked about was a previous council approval
And
of
state, yeah.
$3 million.
Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, so
That's
I
a big
just
difference.
Just want to
Thank you.
clarify. So this million is for other work that we identify throughout the entire system.
Okay, I take that back, sorry.
Thank you, Councilor Doucette. Councilor Roby, you're all set?
I was going to make the same point.
Okay. All right, motion's been made and seconded to approve. All in favor? It does not carry. Oh, I'm sorry, no, all in favor? 1. All opposed? 4. Thank you. Does not carry. Thank you, councilors. Okay, moving on to order number 22-100-8536C. Request for appropriation in the amount of $5,175,000 for the purpose of paying the cost of street construction. And thank you, Commissioner, as well, that the mayor did send down the letter of what some of the streets that are on there. I don't want to go into cherry picking the streets and all that, because I know how the process has started. But I don't know if you'd like to weigh in on some of for that particular cost of some of the road work.
Mr. Chair, I would like for you to call up Tom DePercio, city engineer.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
That'd be wonderful. Good evening, Engineer DePercio.
Hello.
And again, thank you for putting the list together and showing and explaining over the years how the assessment is made throughout the year, looking at these roads and the roadways and upkeep and all the, doing the reconstruction. So thank you very much, sir. I'll open that to any questions from the council. Oh, Council Newman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner, again, thank you for putting in this work. This is our scene infrastructure, so I'll get off my soapbox about water for a second. But I did have a couple of questions. I can certainly appreciate the backlog that you have on the amount of streets that need work. And I never realized how the condition of our city's roads are impacted by winter until I started driving around the city a lot more, trying to get a 6-month-old to sleep. And I can tell you where every single pothole and every single crack on the roads in this city are, and they all need attention, like every road does, especially in New England. So I appreciate the work that you've done on this. 2 questions. One, we talked in the past about how road work can be done in the city in 2 different ways, right? You can do a full depth reconstruction, and then you can do kind of where you run the truck down and you kind of do a top coat, which will provide a very nice street, but that's going to be a short-term fix. The road work that's being done, is that going to be the former or the latter?
So what we like to do is look at the condition of the roadway and make a determination on what the repair technique should be. Obviously, doing a mill and overlay is less expensive than doing a reconstruction.
Yeah.
And so we like to, look at what the roadway presents for condition and make that decision on what to do. I will say that we can stretch our dollars by, doing mills and overlays.
Right.
They don't last as long as a reconstructed street for obvious reasons, but, if you spent all day, mopping the floor in your kitchen, you wouldn't get the rest of the house clean. So sometimes...
But you could eat off the floor in the kitchen.
You can eat off the floor in the kitchen, yes, but the rest of the floor is dirty. So sometimes it makes sense to kind of spread out a little bit, even though it's not the best repair technique.
Right.
it's sometimes better to kind of spread it out a little bit so you have a little better, rideability for these other streets.
And so is this a mix? Is this year's plan a mix
Yes.
of them two? Okay, thanks. The other question is, I've had a couple of constituents reach out regarding that they were hoping that their roads could be fixed, and obviously recognizing that, there's a priority list. Is there a way, obviously we reach out, to you, to the mayor, and you're always very responsive. Is there a way that the city collects data and other points for residents to, besides like click and fix, to say, hey, we think our road is a good candidate, and they can bring it to you? This is just a question I received this week, and I just kind of want to offer it up as a, a way. We can certainly take it, and we can forward it to you, and forward it to the mayor, again, who are very responsive, but, is there a way for, the average citizen to kind of collect pictures from their street, talk to their neighbors, and try to, flag this as a priority?
We'll certainly field those questions and certainly take notes on it. Sadly, our response often is, it's not in this year's program.
Sure.
It's not in the next, 2, 3, 4 years program. We understand it's an issue, but we've got needs across the entire city. And so being a public servant, it's always very hard for me to say no.
Sure. Yep.
And so we take those requests and we take them very seriously. What I will say is we have a pavement management plan, a system in place. And what that does is it looks at the condition of roadways throughout the community and assigns a score based on the visible distresses. It's alligator cracking, longitudinal cracking, and the like, and assigns a score, and then we are able then to put in certain budget inputs. It goes into a computer model, put in certain budget inputs, and then it outputs to us where we can get the best bang for the buck. So what Jay talked about before, reconstruction versus mills and overlays versus crack sealing versus chip sealing and this and that. And so it provides us some feedback, some good information to say, okay, if we have $1 million, we have $5 million, the computer model says this is the best way to stretch those dollars to get the best coverage that we can for the dollars that we have. And so that's one tool that we have in the toolbox that we like to use, and we're constantly improving that system, and we're in the midst of doing that right now, actually.
Okay. That's helpful. I think people appreciate hearing that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilman. Quick question also, Commissioner. I know with some of these numbers for these roads, I thought some of them would be higher than this, the cost, but I guess I don't know how per the cost of doing the road. On some of these, is it the entirety of the road or just kind of fixing certain areas that that was presented on this list? Like,
in all cases, it's the entirety of the road.
Entirety of
and
the
as Sean said, we're leaning more towards, overlays or mill and overlay where maybe, the condition in some areas of certain roads might tend to lean toward a different technique, but we're just trying to hopefully replicate the success we had on a couple other streets where we did an overlay where it was sort of a borderline street and it worked out, and
I remember a couple of years ago, you did a great job on Tassie Drive and Temple. You got the sidewalks in one summer. It was a great fix.
And some of these streets, they don't have sidewalks.
Good point.
That adds to a lot of the cost too, so that's why maybe they look a little less than what you might expect.
And I'm not complaining to see a number lower like that.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And then the other thing I have is just a comment. It's kind of like an eyeball test, sort of driving to work and everything. And I'll leave out some of the communities that I go through, but a couple years ago, these communities are smaller than the city of Marlborough, and maybe getting Chapter 90 funds or so forth like that. And some of these roads have been completely done less than 2 years ago, and now driving through them, they're cracked, they're falling apart. So I guess my question going forward is, we obviously keep a list of some of the companies that are doing, the construction companies that are performing this work, and if they don't succeed to your measures and you won't use them again. I mean, I think it's amazing that some of these communities had these roads done and they're in terrible condition. And I asked myself, who did these roads? I mean, a couple years ago, I didn't see this kind of work done. I thought the quality was better a couple years ago. But then again, that might be just an eyeball test. I don't have any science data in front of me that goes forward with that, but that's just my comment.
Yeah, I mean, certainly if there's, when we do, and it's rare, to have a contractor that we're not happy with, we're not going to give them work again. So I don't know, it was a tough winter, so, I don't know if it was bad contractors in those communities, or maybe they did a technique that really wasn't appropriate for that road for whatever reason, but, there's a lot of reasons why it could start cracking prematurely, but
Okay, no, that's all right. I didn't want to put you on the
That's
spot.
not ideal,
engineer,
obviously.
But just a question. Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. When you grind the streets, I mean, you open it up, you can see what's underneath. Do you find situations where after you basically lift up the surface, that the subsurface actually needs work? I mean, is that something that gets addressed at that point after you open it up? Because, sometimes the top looks mediocre. It turns out the pressing problem's underneath, so.
yeah, I mean, a lot of times you can tell by the condition of the road if the base is problematic.
Okay.
The way that it's failing.
Yeah.
You can tell that it's a condition with the base and not just the pavement, so that's an assessment you have to do when you decide if you're gonna mill an overlay or do full depth reconstruction.
Okay, so if you do a mill overlay, you don't do any work on the subfloor at all, or the sub road at all?
You're milling off
Right.
the top of the asphalt, and you're
Yep.
leaving the base of the asphalt, so
Okay.
you're not usually not going all the way through the asphalt.
Yeah, okay, I just wanted clarification, appreciate it, thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Doucette. Councilor Landers.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick comment and a question. Of course, what we have going against this, a lot of these developments are 50 years old. My street is 54 years old. Miles Standish, Main Street, is 56 years old. And what's hurt them over the years is the cable people coming in, because we were the underground cables there. And some of them didn't do that great a job after they put their cable in, filling the trenches in. So it's the complaint we get so much from people that, when is that road gonna be fixed and this and that? And I make up stories and tell them what you're trying to do. But it's a process that you can't get it all done in a year. But I made a comment a couple of years ago, Tom, and around Greater Boston, they did it, and I'm not sure if they do it so much now, but like Lower County Road down in Dennis, it's about 3 miles. And what they did, what the MDC used to do, they patched the road somewhat. And then they put tar, liquid tar, and then pebbles. And they just did it last year. And that Lower County goes all the way, really, from the Howard line, right up. Have you ever, and I mentioned it to a guy that used to work here, I mentioned to him one time, he said, yeah, they do a pretty good job on that. Have you ever addressed that? That has to be one way of improving roads. Now, you might only get 10 years out of it, that's the problem.
Yeah, I have quite a bit of experience with that. So modern terminology, that's called a chip seal.
What's that?
Called a chip seal.
Yeah.
So it's, right, as you mentioned, application of liquid asphalt and then usually a 3/8 inch stone that gets embedded in that asphalt. And so what that is basically a topical treatment. If you've got a roadway that's of good profile and is in fairly good condition, if there is some cracking that starts to appear that you can't then crack seal efficiently, then you can apply this technique. There's pros and cons with it, like there is with most pavement techniques. One of the cons we hear often is in a neighborhood street. If you do it, the surface is rough. It's not like a smooth asphalt street, and so if there's kids, skateboarding or bicycling in the street, they get all scraped up. So it is a tool in the toolbox.
You don't see that much of it, but that's the biggest project I've seen recently.
Right.
Not down in Dennis.
Nowadays, it's not done as much as it
The
used to.
MDC used to do it, Soldiers Road, Memorial Drive, all those streets one time, but, okay, that's my question and comment. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Councilor Landers. Oh, Councilor Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I want to go back to the point that Councilor Irish was making, but take it from a different viewpoint. We were at a recent MMA meeting talking to City Councilor in Lowell, who approached us and questioned whether it was actually the asphalt that's not up to par, not that the contractor's putting the asphalt. So has that been discussed as an issue? Is the asphalt not the same quality as it was 5 years ago? And
That's a fact, actually. Back in the old days, when asphalt was made, it was made with all virgin material. So all fresh stone, fresh sand, fresh liquid asphalt, all batched together. Nowadays, a lot of recycled asphalt goes in, and it's of lesser quality than, virgin sand and stone. You can still make good asphalt with it, but the tolerances are much tighter on getting a good mix. And so I've served on some committees. There was, about 5-10 years ago, Mass DOT found out some of these asphalt companies, they were importing engine oil and putting that into asphalt, and it was creating all kinds of problems. So all sorts of things have happened over the years, some sneaky, maybe not so much. But yeah, it's a fact that asphalt nowadays is not as good as it used to be. It can be good, but not typically.
okay, and then another question is, we're talking about the streets like they're top secret. Nobody's mentioned what the streets are. So are they on the city website yet, or will they be on? And I know you send, well, I know we have a list, but does the public know that their street's going? I know you send notices to residents, but the rest of the city wouldn't know that you're doing Boundary Street. And if they decide to go down Boundary, will they now find out that they have to turn around and go back?
I mean, we do make those notices, but generally not until we know it's gonna
A
happen.
done deal?
Yeah.
Okay, so the list of streets will be released soon, and people can start planning their detours. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor.
Thank you. Being a ward councilor for 12 years, I can truly respect what my fellow ward councilors deal with on street renovations. Curious, over the past year, I've done a couple click and fixes too, because I walk and I see the potholes. What have we spent this year so far on, or over the past year for crack sealing and potholes? Just curious. What's that side of the budget look like?
I mean, the winter was horrible for
I
us.
know.
I don't even get involved with that budget
Yeah,
so much.
Is it over $1 million for an
I don't think it's over $1 million for pothole repair, no. But it's a significant number.
Didn't
for
mean to
sure.
put you on the spot. I know it's not on the agenda, but I was just curious. A question related to this is, how many years are you projecting? Right now, we're looking at 5.175 million. Are you projecting that for the next few years with the format that you use to determine streets that need repairs? And how many years are you looking into the future on that?
So we're in the middle now of going through the pavement management, like Sean said, to kind of better refine it, to better reflect what our projects usually look like, because we do try to do utility repairs where we can when we're gonna do the street, and the pavement management for 4 was a little bit narrow in its focus, in that the projections were only looking at the pavement repair. So we're refining it now, and 5 million was the yearly budget that we used previously. So I think it's an appropriate number, but we'll see how that projects out as we put it into the new system.
Okay, and you mentioned previously on the water tanks that they have these condo-type fees and programs available for maintenance. Are there any groups out there that do this for pavement management? Where you enter into a contract and they look at what we need and project 5-10 years into it?
Not that I'm aware of, and going back to the water tanks, that's a special law that was passed by the legislature for that very purpose. There's no such thing for street.
So we're on our own with that.
We're on our own.
Understandable. And that's pretty much all I had for questions. I just wanted to make sure we're forecasting other streets in the future, so my fellow ward councilors and myself even can say, well, I know that's projected for maybe 3 years down the road. So, you know, if that kind of list is out there, that would be helpful too, once the management program starts, I believe you're starting this right now, it'd be nice to have that list to give some general information with not a guarantee to our constituents that, yes, we know this street X is in need of repair, it's projected, and this is why it's projected that year, based on what you said earlier. Other streets have greater needs right now. And there could be the consideration that we, as a city council, might need to consider an increase in this yearly appropriation, if indeed we have quite the list. But I'll be looking forward to seeing what happens with the overview of the full management plan. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Orm. There's no further discussions. I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve order number 22-100-8536C for $5,175,000 for the purpose of paying the cost of street new construction or repaving, street construction.
I will second that. Motion has been made and seconded to approve order number 100-8536C. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carries 5-0. Thank you, councilors. So next up is order number 22-100-8536D. Request for a transfer in the amount of $1,448,100 from undesignated fund free cash to various departmental capital requests, including the following capital items: fire squad truck, refurbishing pools, Evergreen Cemetery expansion project, school havoc upgrades, Reservoir Street bump out, and public works equipment. And while you're there, Commissioner Duval, might as well go to you about the public works equipment that's involved in this.
Okay. With your indulgence, Mr. Chair, I'd like to call up Assistant Commissioner Ted Scott.
Thank you. I'm thinking that the council may have some questions on that. Assistant Commissioner Scott? I'll open up to the finance team if they had any questions in regards to this. Councilor Orm?
On the one it's, we on pools and cemeteries with DPW, anything they're dealing with? Is that how you want to handle it, Mr. Chair?
I'm sorry, what's?
Do you want to handle it where I can ask a question on pools and cemeteries?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Oh,
'Cause
sure,
I know
absolutely. Yeah, it's all under that order, absolutely.
Yeah, schools are HVAC. It says under cemeteries, begin, the word begin, site work for expansion of a green cemetery based, and it's grouped into the rehabilitation of the pool surfaces. What do we expect for the finalization of the expansion work at Evergreen, and what is the total? Do we have a cost of what the whole project will cost?
We had plans done up probably 5 years ago that showed quite an extensive expansion. I don't think we're going to go that large, but it's probably in the neighborhood of $2 to $3 million.
Okay, so this is just a very beginning stage of it. So of that 205, what are we planning to spend on the pools? 75 for the cemetery?
There's some particular things we need to look at as far as when you're digging in cemeteries. The Evergreen Cemetery is a large fill area, and there's things that are buried. So once you sell lots, you can't have things underground if there's already people buried and you're trying to dig a hole, you know. So it may take exploratory stuff. We're probably gonna do it in phases, probably in-house maybe, or with small contracts to try to do exploratory to see what we have there. So that's part of the mission we're doing. We don't want to go out in a big project and waste a lot of money. We want to see if we can do it in-house, try to explore and see what we're dealing with.
And the final price tag's around $2 to $3 million in the long run. This is the exploratory. Thank you so much for that.
And the way they're going now, or the way is to funeral niches,
where you have the ashes in a wall or something. That's the way it's going because land is getting used up. So whether we go with that and how ornate we go and all adds to the cost.
Well, thank you for that answer. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Roby.
Thank you. So can you clarify the expense for each of them? It's just $205,000 for the cemetery and the pools.
Right.
Do you know the price difference between?
75 for the
Cemetery, did I hear
and
you say?
130 for the pools.
Okay.
And the two pools are roughly even. They'll know once they get in there and start doing the work.
And is it a complete redo of those surfaces?
Pools?
The pools?
So the pools are gunite, concrete, and then there's a plaster surface with tile. It's the plaster and the tile. And any remedial work around maybe inlets or something that may need some concrete repair or crack sealing.
So I take it that work would begin as soon as this was approved, so it can be done in time for pool season to open?
We try, with the procurement process, we try, but we have to see.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Roby. If I may just add to that on the pools, I know years ago, sometimes in the pool area, the water would be more on the green side. That must affect the condition in the surface of the pools that now need to be repaired as well.
What does affect it is when the pools go down for the season, they water blast it, and then the plastic comes peeling off, they gotta patch it, so now we're at the point of diminishing returns. Every time you go in, it's creating powder, you're patching more than you have to, you're better off just replacing the whole system so you're not doing major repairs every time.
Because I know in some neighborhoods, if the mineral, it's a higher mineral content in your pool, the copper mixed with your chlorine is gonna turn it green. I didn't know if there's a filtering system that is used when they fill the pool waters?
That would be more with the rec.
Okay, that's fine, I was just curious, but no, thank you, Councilor Navin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to just take a second to highlight one of the smaller items, but something that is very important is the Reservoir Street intersections. This is definitely one of those items that is a good government thing, and I don't know how many people at home recognize the work of the Traffic Commission, which is where this kind of bubbled up from. I received a couple of calls from constituents that live over on Red Spring about the speed on the causeway and how the sweeping turn, if you're heading north on Bolton Street down onto the causeway, generates vehicles traveling quite quickly, which creates a very dangerous situation for people turning left out of Red Spring, and also quite a bit of speed when people are hitting the causeway. And I know the police department's run some reports that show that people get quite a good speed coming down that hill to head across the water. And unfortunately, there was a fatality last year. So this was a recommendation that had come up through that process. And when I talked with the mayor about it, he was very supportive and looked right into it. And I know you guys had already had it on your agenda to talk about. So first, I want to say thank you, because I know the residents down there are very happy to see this. And then second, the $100,000, is that for design or for construction? Will that take care of the bump out?
Yep, yeah, we did the design.
Yep. In-house?
In-house.
Okay,
yep.
great.
And we're going to do the construction in-house, most of it
Streets will
at
be
least.
doing the construction,
Yeah,
so saving the money.
That's great.
And that will allow it to, as soon as the money's appropriated, we'll be right on it.
Okay, so that's something.
The layout or.
Okay, so that's something that kind of before the season starts down there is something that it can be created? Okay, well, again, thank you. Thank you to you and to the mayor. That's be very helpful for the residents down there.
Thank you,
Mr.
Councilor
Chair.
Navin. Thank you, Councilor. Oh, Councilor Roby?
Yeah, I didn't know if anybody else had other questions. I know you started out with us asking about public works equipment. So I'm curious, can you explain the truck that's being purchased and why it's not just a normal truck? The
10-wheeler?
F-550 truck with the Watergate valve. And what is a Watergate valve, and why do we need one?
I can speak for Chris Lafreniere a little bit, but if you need more detail, or do you want?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
I would
absolutely.
like- if we could call Mr. Lafreniere up here, because he has a lot to say on this.
Lafreniere, yeah, absolutely, please, thank you. His expertise.
I know what an F-550, but I have no idea what a Watergate valve is.
Yeah, so this vehicle, I think, is a long time coming in this community. It'll allow our staff in the Water and Sewer Division to have a mechanized means of getting on water gates that control the water main, shutting them on and off, and exercising the gates, which is something that we're mandated to do by Mass DEP, and it speeds up the process quite a bit. It has a vector on it, which allows cleaning that gate to get down to the operating nut on it, so we don't have to call our vac truck out there to clean it out. It's got a GPS locator system, which we've never been able to go out with equipment to locate where all the valves in the city are. So it'll do all that simultaneously and really give us the ability to have a comprehensive gate turning program in the city of Marlborough, which again, we're mandated to do by Mass DEP. And yeah, I'm excited for it. I hope it's something that, you know, with the equipment we have now, with the manpower we have now, it's just extremely slow making progress on this thing that needs to be done.
So this will be dedicated to the Water and Sewer Department?
Correct.
Or
The intent
it's-
is not to use it plowing. It's going to have very specialized equipment on it and just be used for this purpose.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Council.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. While we're on this subject, if I can ask, I saw back when I used to work in a certain town, someone trying to shut off a water gate in the middle of Route 126, and the water was just flying out. So it was a real safety concern for the water department. Does this help to alleviate that type of situation as well, so that a human being isn't getting flushed out by water when you're trying to shut off a gate in the middle of a road?
Yeah, it has a hydraulic arm that goes down and goes onto the operating nut, and it's torqued to specifications that these gates have on them. So it's not left to the operator's judgment on how hard to crank them on or off. It's set in a computer on board in the machine to prevent breaking damage of the gates.
And safety to the personnel as well. You can be on the truck versus out on the road doing this? Or do you need a person hovering over? Just curious.
You're going to have a person on the arm, you know, putting it on the nut, but it's going to be hydraulically.
But not with the bar?
But yeah, the bar will go away. There's always going to be the need for that to some degree, but this program of going out and cleaning these thousands of valves that we have in the city will become much quicker and faster with a piece of equipment like this.
Worth its weight in gold.
Any further discussion? Councilor Dumas.
Thank you. I just want to confirm, so the breakdown that we have here is the pools and cemeteries for 205, the school building improvements for 150, the Reservoir Street is for 100, then DBW is for 750. That total comes to 1.2 million. The transfer is for 1.4. I just want to confirm that the light-duty squad truck that's not mentioned in this packet is for the $243,100 difference. I just want to confirm that because it's not broken down. Like, it's dug in, so I had to do a lot of research to figure out what that extra remaining 243 was. So I just want to confirm that when we do this transfer for 1.4, that's where it's getting allocated to, is this light-duty squad truck for the fire department. Is that how much that costs? Thank you.
6.9 breaks it down, Counselor.
So, Mr. Chair,
Mr. President.
if I can help Councilor Dumas, so on the actual budget transfer sheet that's in front of the council, you will see that $24,100. It's on there for the fire squad truck.
For the squad.
And that gets you to the total of the
Right.
1.4 million.
I that's where I found it. I just wanted to double check that and all the numbers align. Thank you. If there's no other further discussion, I'll motion to approve.
Thank you, Councilor Dumas. I will second that motion. Motion has been made and seconded to approve order number 22-100-8536D. A request and transfer in the amount of $1,448,100 from undesignated fund free cash to various departmental capital requests, including the following capital items: fire truck squad, refurbishing pools, Evergreen Cemetery expansion project, school havoc upgrades, Reservoir Street bump out and public works equipment. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Oh, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I did have handed out to each of the councilors, it's my list, it's not an official list, but you'll see on the mayor's transfer sheet, the available money in free cash is $11.2 million. I just keep a list of all the items that
Pending.
down from the mayor's office or the council's asked for, and basically to address Councilor Wagner's concern the other night on, is there enough money in undesignated funds? And I don't know what your definition of enough is, but if everything that we've got before us right now is approved, there's still over $3 million in the undesignated funds.
Undesignated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. Motion was made and seconded. All in favor? Carries 5-0. Thank you, Finance. I will entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. All in favor? We are adjourned at 8:35 PM. Thank you, Finance team.